Hi, I'm Diane. Um, I first want to introduce myself. My name is Diane Seibel. I am in the MBA class with my focus on healthcare leadership. I'm very excited to be finishing this up as I am older and I'm working full time, as most people do in today's world as they're going to school. So I'm really excited to be finishing this up. I am currently serving as the regional clinical director for Pathways Recovery Centers. I am at Holland Pathways in Wichita, Kansas as the clinical director. And I'm also at a Sunflower Wellness Retreat in Osawatomie, Kansas as the clinical director and the executive director. So this entire program has been so helpful in some of the skills I've had to use while working in a field that is very diverse. And also as I am trying to lead others and improve both of these agencies' programs through my leadership and change that I have tried to implement throughout this. So my career has changed a little bit throughout this whole process, and I'll talk about that at the end as I'm wrapping up for my entire graduate journey. But to start with talking about each of my artifacts and why I chose those particular artifacts, I want to start with the first one, in Leadership as a Calling, which was the very first class I took in this particular course of study. At that time, I didn't know that I was to have a capstone paper that would go in with this final project. So going back to it now is interesting because it was really about 4 key questions that were asked in that final paper about who I am as a leader. At that time, I was working in a very different organization, and I was fairly new in that higher level of leadership position. I've been in leadership positions before, but that particular one that I was working in was different because of the people I impacted and the large number of people I was supervising and the influence that I had over those people and how I was able to lead them to do things differently, more effectively, more efficiently, and in a better way of many times seeing a child, seeing a family in their diversity, which led me into most of the way my other papers were then formulated, that I really focused on the diverse culture of anyone that I served, not only in the leadership role, but also in the general atmosphere of the company that I was in. So in that particular paper, I was working at the Wichita Children's Home, which led me into my second paper, which was in quality management and had to do with transgender youth. At the Children's Home, we had a few kids that were dealing with their gender identity due to trauma or just due to it being the thing to do in this day and age. And we had some struggles with some of our older leadership, understanding what that looked like for youth today and how we separate and treat and identify transgender youth. So developing a training and then working with the youth to make sure that their needs were being met in the best way possible and fostering their needs, treating their trauma, and also making sure that my leaders were well equipped, well aware, and well informed about what they were doing with the youth in order to make them successful in their young adult and also in their decisions about if they really wanted to transition to a different sex or if they just needed to explore their own sexuality and identity in that particular time. So part of my paper is about how transgender youth and foster care was ever growing and that it was still kind of an unknown thing, and how to navigate that process in the youth care field, which is where I was at that time. And that then led me into the cultural diversity class, which I wrote a paper on just straight cultural diversity and how different it is in today's day and age, and how aware we need to be as leaders, how we are hiring, treating other people, and also within our own organizations, making sure that we are culturally diverse, that we're able to offer things for every population that we serve, and as a leader, making sure that those populations are being respected and their needs are met, either religiously, culturally, socially, any of those kind of things. So I focused that paper on that. And then it's staying with the cultural piece. I'm looking at my paper. I skipped one actually. The next one I did had to do with a SWOT analysis in my marketing plan. So I learned so much in the SWOT analysis or in the marketing class because I was working in the nonprofit sector. And I did a SWOT analysis while I was at the Wichita Children's Home and a marketing plan, and presented it to my CEO. And she actually used that to speak to the board about developing a program that was not currently being served, a group of youth that are not being served, which is adolescents and drug and alcohol programs or substance abuse issues. We were not addressing that issue. We were addressing trauma, but we were not addressing things that had to do with substance use, and there was no place for these kids to go. So I learned so much in this doing the SWOT analysis of where our weaknesses are and our opportunities. And presented that, like I said, in the nonprofit world. My whole marketing plan was very different because it was based on grants. It was based on donations, and how do we pay for something that is non-reimbursable in the state of Kansas? And how do we budget that into our overall goal when we know it is a high-risk situation, not a money maker. It is definitely a money sucker, and it's not something that anyone wants to do because they don't want to take the risk. And so that was presented at our board of directors meeting, and that was a very exciting time for me when I was doing that. However, it led to kind of a change in career for me due to my CEO taking that on as her own, and that was really frustrating for me. So I, in researching that, was able to find this particular position that I'm in right now at a drug and alcohol facility. Again, Holland Pathways is where I'm primarily based. I'm today in Osawatomie, Kansas at my Sunflower Wellness Retreat office, but I moved on to strategic planning in that because I was now looking at what am I going to do with this next position that's going to be different, and how am I going to increase my profitability in the job that I'm in. So working with any kind of marketing plan and making sure I'm working toward a goal of a budget that is longstanding and profitable in the end. And some of that had to do with looking at the increasing cost of healthcare and reimbursable amounts from insurance companies and government spending and the increasing debt of the world and Medicare. All of those things is what I was looking at and researching when I was in the strategic planning class and in that particular artifact. I went in then to international finance as the next artifact. And honestly, international finance was the worst class I had in this particular course of study. I didn't enjoy it. I learned very quickly that the accounting track was not something I would ever want to do. I'm much better at a leadership role and not a financial role. So that one I just had to kind of stick through, and I wrote the paper on cultural differences and the risks involved in international finance. And probably that's not my most well-rounded paper. It's one that I chose because I did struggle with it, and I also feel like it turned out okay, and I learned a lot in that class. So I'm not saying it's not a good paper. I just struggled with that one a little bit. So that's why I chose the papers that I did. Highlighting some of the leadership things in my BLT then was organizational effectiveness. Of course, that as I've talked through this, that was some of the things that I have learned in this path, is how important communication is in organizational effectiveness. Communication obviously is used in two ways. It's either to share information or to influence someone, or motivate, in other words, influence or motivate others, or to share information back and forth. And I find in leadership, most of the time your communication is used to motivate or influence, more so than sharing information. Usually you want to share the information, and then you want to motivate someone to believe that it's the right information and to get what you need out of your team from that. I also highlighted self-awareness and how we interact with others in our cultural awareness and communication. Communication is key in any kind of organization, and being self-aware of your own communication when you're speaking with others in regard to their culture, their sensitivities, their different kind of nuances that go with who they are. Leadership, I've always felt, is part of leading to serve. I've always been in an organization where I serve others. It is not an organization where I feel like being at the top is a position of power. It is definitely a position of servitude, where I get to serve others that are struggling in their particular time in their life. And that as a leader, I get to empower my people that work for me to empower others. And that is something that I feel very strongly about as a leader, that I am definitely not here to be a authoritarian. I am here to empower and to lead, and lead by example. And that's my goal in this position and in any position I hope to have in the future. With that goes with the ability to delegate others to do things, because that then leads to empowerment. And then also making sure I have diversity in the corporate roles. Many times people feel like others are looked over, passed over, but I try to really look at the people that I put in roles of leadership or roles of authority to make sure that my population is diverse, because the community that we work with, the population that we work with, have very different needs, and they need to be able to meet those needs where they are. And without having a diverse group of people that lead them, that I couldn't attain that. So those are the highlights of the things that I put in my BLT, and maybe a little bit of my own soapbox, but I was trying to really show how I've grown as a leader throughout my entire journey as a graduate student at an older age. This is my second master's degree, so my second graduate journey, and I have really struggled a lot more with this particular graduate program. My first one was in marriage and family therapy, and I really had a passion for therapy and doing marriage and family therapy specifically. As I got into the roles of clinical director and on up, I was really more administrative, and my goal was then to become a CEO or an executive director. I learned quickly at the children's home that just wasn't in the cards. And so I became a little bit, I guess, discouraged in my journey with my MBA, because I knew that wasn't going to be a role that I was going to fulfill, just due to some personal things and some differences in opinions, that kind of thing. But then moving on into the company I'm in now, I do see a need for higher level leaders. And I am now serving as an executive director. It may just be an interim position. I don't know yet. I'm filling in right now as the executive director, and I have continued this, and I'm so glad that I continued my journey with my MBA. Throughout all of this, there's been many life changes, many things happening in 2 years' time that, as with everybody, life is ever changing, and nothing is stagnant in the world. So I hope that I have highlighted this journey of mine in a way that helps you see who I am as a person, as a leader, and can really show you the growth that I've made throughout this. I have thoroughly enjoyed my journey, and this last class as a capstone project has been difficult, but I still have learned so much through it. And I've appreciated all of the professors I've had throughout this. Every single one has been very helpful and very kind with their feedback and helpful with feedback, not just, no, you didn't do it right, but you need to change this and this is why. And that's the way I learn. And I appreciate that so much from each and every one of my professors that I have had. So with that, I will wrap this up. I'm very excited about graduation on Saturday. I do intend to walk, and I am so excited to finish up this degree and say that I did it and I have my MBA. Thanks so much.